we had our service broadcasted over the radio waves on Saturday night in Abilene, Texas.
No, but I think it's a joke because it's the number of the Reformation.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's why I'm like,
I
I
wanna
don't
say
know if
it's
it's
like I
serious,
wanna
but
say it's like 11 or 1,200. You're the one in charge of that, bro. You can't just plug your ears like it's not gonna fix until you fix it. So my name is Patrick Blake. Um, my official title right now is, and I say right now because it changes all the time, but I think I'm Director of Worship Arts and Technology at St. Timothy Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas. And yeah, I do worship and tech. kind of what
nice.
kind of what my
Kind of go hand in hand.
yeah.
Um, were you born
Yeah,
here?
yeah, yeah. So I was actually born and raised in Houston.
Okay.
Um, do you want my whole background right now?
Yeah. Just
Oh yeah, I'll
give the
give it to you.
rundown.
Yeah.
Like, well, because we want to lean into, um, like how you got involved in church work. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
church background or just a background in general on how you got involved with, music, tech, worship,
Okay.
church work, all that stuff. So.
Yeah, so I'm deeply Lutheran, baby.
Mm.
Deeply Lutheran. My parents actually met at a Lutheran youth group in Beaumont, Texas. That's where they met, and then they got married and had 3 kids. I have an older brother who's actually a pastor out in Long Beach,
Long Beach,
Kyle Blake,
California?
Long Beach, California. Yeah,
I know Kyle.
yeah,
Okay.
Kyle. And then my sister lives here in Houston as well. She's a financial controller of a private school just around the corner here
Oh,
from
man.
Trinity. So,
She she was like, "I'm not gonna get into church work." Look at these
yeah,
2 other
no, she
bozos.
wasn't about it. Yeah, she wasn't about it.
Smart.
But yeah, grew up, like I said, going to Our Savior actually down in Houston. And so my mom was a teacher there. My dad was a Houston police officer.
Oh,
Grew up at Our Savior. In middle school, we moved out to Conroe, which for people who don't know, it's just kind of a town about 30 miles north of Houston.
yeah, I was
Um,
looking at getting a house in Conroe, and then I
yeah,
was like,
it's a drive,
"This
bro.
is."
And
Yeah.
45 is horrible, horrible. I mean, to those California people, it's nothing, but for
Yeah.
it's like Dallas traffic, man. It's horrible. Anyway, um, so went to Lutheran church out there, little conservative Lutheran church, and then my freshman year we moved to Trinity. So we started attending Trinity Klein, and so I was at Trinity from through all through high school, and then through college. When I came back home, we worshipped here. Um, and
And
that
then
was
when you first came here,
mhm.
I'm assuming there was probably no contemporary.
They just started it.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So for those that know Our Savior Lutheran, very traditional church. Matter of fact, I think for me that's where like just the beauty of liturgy, the beauty of those hymns, just kind of got embedded into my soul, as a kid, because every Sunday was that traditional worship, and I love it. I really do. Um, and then when we moved to Trinity, they were just starting contemporary worship. So at that point too, in Christian music, like music was not great, right? Like I was listening to secular music, but also some Christian music.
we've come a long way.
Yeah, man. I mean, Carmen. I'm older than you, so I don't know if you even know who that is. But I mean, it was just bad.
Yeah,
Petra.
someone showed me. Um, I think it was Carmen. It was he does like spoken word,
Yeah.
and someone showed me a few of his song like live shows, and I was like, "This is wild,
Yeah, dude.
but
Yeah.
it's cool. It's
Yeah.
different."
It was different is a great positive word. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, got to Trinity. They had just started contemporary service. They actually did it in the old gym. So it was a setup breakdown every Sunday. Sound was absolutely wretched. But it kind of introduced me to contemporary music in worship, and I loved it. I loved it. Loved everything about it. I didn't grow up a musical person really though. Like so I didn't like I sang in the choir in high school. Uh, I think I took like a year of piano when I was in 4th grade, and that ended quick because I was like, piano's for girls. And so
It's too
t-
hard too.
yeah,
It's like
so I
who's got
tell my
nobody got
mom.
time for that.
And but I was always music cool, if that makes sense. So I like it I never got super into music, but I was always like a music cool person.
Yeah, just listening to music
Right, yeah,
constantly.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. and sing all the time. And I would play piano, but like just by ear kind of
Yeah, like
things.
worship
Yeah.
piano.
No, I didn't play worship stuff. It was like, bum 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 bum,
Oh,
that kind of stuff.
chopsticks.
Yeah. Uh, so then when I turned 19, or not 19, I guess my parents got me one of the graduation gifts I got was a guitar.
Nice. Acoustic?
Yeah, acoustic guitar, an Alvarez
Ah,
with
nice.
the worst action ever, but I didn't know at the time, right? So I started learning guitar at the age of 18, just for something to do. So I took it with me to college and took me. I remember, you know Joel Eisenbahn, right? So Joel Eisenbahn was a youth guy here when I was here as a kid, and he played guitar. So I'd go to him and be like, "Hey, man," I didn't take lessons per se, but he would kind of show me like, "This is how you would hold a D chord or whatever." And I just remember being in awe that he could play and sing at the same time because that was like impossible for me at that point as a learner, as a newbie. So that's kind of where my introduction into playing musical instruments was. And then through college, um, I played I played a lot, honestly. Like I just always put myself in position to practice. And then I learned pretty quick that like to get better, you had to play with other people, even if like you were horrible. And so I felt bad for them, but like I noticed that that was when I started getting better chops when I was playing with people. So I started playing in bands in college at Seward. Um, actually played I played in a band of what we call townies in Seward, basically the people that lived in Seward.
Locals.
So I played in a band with a bunch of townies. I played bass, and we we were a classic rock cover band called Nobody You Know.
Hmm,
We had one gig, one gig
that's
at a
all it takes.
yeah at a bar out like in the boonies in Nebraska, and it was the greatest thing ever, man. I loved it. We practiced all the time, and we like I said, we had one gig and then we broke up. I think the lead singer got put into prison. So
Hmm,
yeah,
that'll do it.
yeah. So we kind of quit playing.
Any press is good press, though.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. That's right. So move from I was in school at Seward to be a youth minister, by the way. So in all this, honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left high school, but everybody's like, you should be a youth minister. And my brother was at Seward already in school to be youth minister, and I was like, okay. So at that point, I don't know if I was called into ministry, to be honest with you. But it was like I didn't know what else to do, and everybody said it. So what the heck, it was 900 miles away. I kind of want to get out of town. Went to Seward, ended up essentially failing out of Seward.
hmm,
Um, I loved social life. That was kind of, at the time. But in all honesty, best thing that ever happened to me. That was honestly, that was when my calling in the ministry happened. Uh, when I got a letter in the mail from the university stating that we were asking you to leave.
hmm.
And at that point in time in my life, it had been, 4 years. All these people had been supporting me. Trinity Klein had been paying me money to help with tuition. All these people, had put their trust in me, and I failed everyone. And I failed myself as well. And I kind of felt like I failed God at that point. And so literally, I'm saying literally a lot. Sorry about that. It's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
Chris can edit it out.
yeah, that's right.
Put a beep over it so it
Yeah.
sounds like you're cursing.
So I spent 2 weeks just crying on my knees, asking God, like, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I have no idea what I wanna do in life. I thought it was this, but I was never really convicted of it." And that's when God placed in my heart, "I want you to go into ministry." And, and he kinda revealed to me through prayer, to continue on the path, and so I ended up transferring to Concordia, Austin to stop partying. It's a great city to not party in.
Hmm.
Uh, but it's all about priorities. It's all about priorities. So went to Concordia, Austin. Um, had some people I knew there already, so that was cool. And ended up being in a country band down there, playing bass in a country band.
What's
And
all this bass?
yeah,
Because the other day you played bass for Concordia Chapel.
yeah,
You
and
said you hadn't played in a while.
yeah, I haven't played bass in a long
Oh,
while.
okay.
Yeah, and that's why it was probably pretty bad. But it is what it is. You get what you get. Um, so played bass in a country band, and we were actually really good. Do you know Josh Duffy? I don't know if you know Josh Duffy or not. He's a pastor down in South Houston, but he was our drummer. And then it was a guy from Seward who had failed out of, or he got kicked out of Seward as well. Love you, Nate. I think I shouldn't say that. I think he was asked to leave as well. Happened to run into this guy on the street in Austin, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Left Seward, went to Missouri, went to college for a year, and me and my buddy decided we're going to start a band, a country band in Austin, Texas. So we moved down here." And I was like, "Well, what do you need still?" He's like, "We need a bass and a drummer." And I was like, "I know a guy. Let's do this." And so we started playing country music, all original stuff, uh, and cut a CD. And we were actually like playing gigs around Austin and pretty decent. And the rhythm guitarist from the band was like his dad was personal friends with the bassist from Alabama.
Hmm.
So Good Friday of I don't know what year it was. I can't remember that. But I remember they were gonna leave Good Friday, the bassist and or not the bassist, I was the bassist. The lead singer and the other guy who knew the bassist from Alabama were gonna fly to Nashville. Excuse me, and take this guy our CD. And so we were like, man, this may be like we actually may actually break into something, you know? And everybody was telling us, yeah, you guys are great. So we had high hopes. And the day that he was supposed to fly out, he got a call from his home. His dad had passed away and he had to fly home because his dad owned a ranch and he was like the only one who knew how to run the ranch beside his dad. So he had to fly home instead of to Nashville and run his ranch.
And then he pretty much didn't come back. Yeah.
And yeah, he didn't come back. And so we played for another year together. I was also at the time playing in worship bands around Concordia, Austin, like with different college kids and stuff. I was actually working at the time for a little bit. I was working part time at Redeemer in Austin, kind of with Travis Hargen, who's a guy up in North Texas, and like helping with college volunteers and music. There was already a music guy there that did music for the stuff. Eddie, who was great, fantastic. And I'll get to that in a minute because that's also where my introduction to tech kind of came from. So, anyway, the country band didn't work out. The guy came back a year later when I was supposed to go on internship, and he's like, "Let's do this." And I'm like, "Dude, I've been in school for almost 8 years. I have to go to my internship. Like, I can't not go on my internship." Like, and they were so mad at me for leaving, and I was like, "Dude, this is what I'm called to. This is what like the country gig was great, and if it worked out, great. But I really feel called to this, and I've been doing this for 7 years now, or like 7.5. I need to go." So ended up quitting the band. But with the Redeemer stuff, that's where I started being introduced to the tech world side of stuff, and with the country band as well. It just always interested me. Like it made sense to me, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm a tech head. Like I love getting new gear. I love seeing what the gear does and pushing, boundaries, if you will, of the gear. And I like nowadays I spend my free time like watching YouTubes of unboxings and reviews and yeah, it's pretty boring stuff, but it
What was some of the tech, yeah, I guess, you first encountered?
yeah, yeah. So
What was that like?
it was mostly just sound stuff, right? So
Okay.
soundboards and, signal chain and figuring out like what does compression do, what EQ sounds good. But I got into it, so I started like reading quote unquote white pages or what people would put out, at the time on the internet and so just kind of pouring myself into it because it interested me, and so that was really the start of it. I didn't get into a lot of the video audio stuff until later on, and it was always a needs basis. So like, it was kind of like, well, I know we need this. I know nothing about it. Well, let me learn. I mean, that's what it came down to. And so I was always trying to learn new things. So went on my internship after college to Zion Lutheran Church in Abilene, Texas. And at that point, I was just youth ministry. So I was actually in charge of children's through college. I found out real quick, children is not my uh, greatest gift. Children's ministry is not my greatest gift. Those kids drove me absolutely bonkers. But I love junior high. I love youth and had a great time there. But when I got there, the pastor at that point they only had traditional worship, and the pastor asked
Zion?
at Zion in Abilene. Yeah, excuse me. And the pastor, when I came in, knew I played guitar, and he said, "Hey, I want to start a contemporary worship service." And I was like, "Okay,
Guitar's all you need.
yeah, right. I'm down. Whatever. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know, what I'm doing, but I'm always I say yes a little too much in life. I know you can feel that.
Yeah, gets
Um,
me into trouble.
so we started out doing a Saturday night service, and it was me on guitar, the pastor's wife on piano, and then two seasoned other ladies who were older. Um, and we all kind of sang together, and we started Saturday night, and I think there was like 10 or 15 people there.
Why Saturday night?
Um, because the congregation wasn't ready for Sunday morning. Honestly, I think was the one
Sunday
of the
morning is too
biggest.
sacred for contemporary, yeah,
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah. Funny enough, we with that service, even from the beginning, the pastor there knew somebody on the radio, right? And so we had our service broadcasted over the radio waves on Saturday night in Abilene, Texas. And to think about the horridness of what they got. I think it was like AM radio, thank the Lord. So, but it was probably even worse, on the other end. And I don't know if anybody listened to it or not, but our services were, I think we recorded and they played the next week, I think is what happened, if I remember correctly. Um, so like I said, 10 people, 10, 15 people when we started out. Within a year, and this is one of my favorite times in ministry because this is where I saw God moving in exponential ways that had nothing to do with us. Because honestly, I think it was Stan Nelson once told me, he said, if you want to attract like good players and good people, then you need to have good stuff, right? Like people want to play with good equipment. People want to play when things are done well. And like, in all honesty, things were not necessarily done well at that point in time for us. And it didn't necessarily sound great either at that point, but I'll never forget, um, this guy walked in the door one night, pretty pretty close to the start. He walked in the door, curly head dude, little skinny guy, young guy, and he sat down. And he sat there for worship, and after the worship service, he came up to me, and he was like, "Hey, man, I'm not Lutheran." I'm actually Church of Christ, but for some reason, when I was driving by this evening, I saw on the sign that you guys had worship, and I just felt like I needed to come in. And I was like, "Okay, that's interesting." And he's like, "And I'm sitting here, and I want to let you know that hey, I play guitar, and I can sing too, and I'd love to play with you guys." Well, at that point in time, like I didn't care, right? There's no auditions here. If you can walk and talk and play guitar, come on, buddy. And so I was like, dude, bring your guitar next week. We'll set it up and we'll have you play with us. This kid shows up and he shreds, like shreds. And he's playing acoustic at this point, and he's like killing leads on acoustic. We kind of got it, pared down or whatever. And I'm just like flabbergasted because at this point in time, like I don't know if I've ever met like a musician of his caliber. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I also play everything else." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, I can play anything." I was like, "So you can play drums?" "Yeah." "I can play keys?" "Yeah." Dude plays harmonica. We ended up, this guy Josh,
Oh,
we ended up being in a little acoustic band together in Abilene. We played around Abilene, and we were called PB&J. That was our little band name.
I
I,
could see it.
I have this. All of my bands have been like horrible names. Even the one I'm in now, pretty horrible name, but it's fun. But we would play "The Devil Went Down in Georgia," and he would play the solos on his harmonica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the dude was awesome. So like he's just a one example. Within like a year and a half, that service had gone from us four to a rotating cast of like 25 musicians and 300 people in attendance. like
When did it move to Sunday morning? That's the
just
real
when
key.
it about a year later. So
Nice.
about a year into it, we moved to Sunday morning, and yeah, it's still, they still got a pretty strong, good congregation up there in Abilene. I still I love that pastor. I love that congregation. And I still get to talk to him every once in a while, and it's 6 hours away, so I don't see him as often anymore. And then, and that was also kind of when we started contemporary service out when I can't talk, when it was like, hey, we need screens. Well, let me figure this out. Hey, we need better lighting. At that point, video wasn't really a thing. Um, but we need to upgrade sound. So with all that, like I said before, it was just teaching myself like how to do tech. What's good, talking to people, going to other churches, and just kind of getting feedback from other people. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but we figured them out and fixed them and went from there.
Yeah, I feel like you went from just learning and relying on the stuff that you had, and then you got to a point where you were like, "We need to get better stuff."
Right, right, right.
'Cause I feel like, yeah, that's the case is
Yeah, and
I
as a
mean,
tech head,
a lot of people will go in and just start buying stuff,
yeah,
and I've always been a big fan of, like, go in, see what they got,
yeah.
use that, once you hit a ceiling, then you can, buy new stuff, but people will just be like, "Ah, just."
Well, especially in church work too. Like, I I do my best, or I feel like I do, maybe to a fault, to be frugal with the money that I'm given, and to not like, because let's say where I'm at now, St. Timothy, like the biggest, baddest, best stuff we don't necessarily need. Like, it's cool, and I'd love to have it. Don't get me wrong, but do we really need that? Right? Like right now, I'm shopping for cameras, and so like, man, I'd love to have like, you know, a and we're on PTZ, so I'd love to go buy a $5,000, $10,000 PTZ camera, or get a Cine camera on a PTZ. But like, let's be honest, like we're not that big of a church. We don't necessarily need that. We need quality, but like that may be overkill. And so just being honest with yourself about being frugal with the money, stewardship, right? I guess is the word we use in churchy words. Um,
Like finding the thing that's gonna work best in your context, and obviously the highest quality
right,
for the
right.
cheapest, yeah.
Yeah. And not necessarily cheapest per se, but like for your needs. Because you want it to be excellent, but there's always that there's the budget and then the ministry, and like you just always have to weigh all that stuff, and it doesn't always work out like you would love it to. But anytime I submit, like the camera project I submitted, actually I'm trying to do all the work myself, so I submitted the bids to the financial guy, and I was like, here's the lowest thing I'll accept, here's mid grade. This is kind of where I want to land at. And if we got the money, this is my pie in the sky, right? This is if we can do this, this is what I want to do. But I'm okay with middle, and like low is the lowest that I'd be willing to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And usually they always land in the middle, so I make sure the middle's a little higher than normal, because I know
It's a
that's
good
the case.
process,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Um, so anyway, back to my long story. I told you I'd talk, bro. We can fill this time up, no problem. So I'm in Abilene doing the thing. End up getting a call to Trinity back here, back home. And I mean, I loved Abilene, but like back home, I wouldn't have minded being back home, right? Um, and I also at that point, I kind of knew that I love youth ministry, but I was okay not doing youth ministry anymore. Does that make sense? But I was not okay not doing music and tech. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
um, so I got a call to Trinity as the assistant minister of music, which is kind of funny because one of the things people knew me, obviously, I was son of the congregation, and I knew the congregation well too. I knew the dynamics of the congregation, and hearsay. But at the meeting where they were discussing issuing the call, somebody stood up and goes, "Why are we calling a music minister who can't read music?" Because I can't really. I mean, I can read music, but not that well. I've always sung by ear, played by ear. Bass clef out the window, bro, out the window. Um, so there was some contention over that, but ultimately they decided to call me, and I accepted the call as the assistant minister of music. So when I got here, uh, it was kind of in charge of contemporary worship and also a lot of the tech stuff. Um, Once again, video still wasn't really a part we had. Like there's some they still, I think they're still up. They just don't get used. Like these old PTZ cameras that look like, I mean, Ring doorbells are better than these at this point, now. But this was back in 2008, I believe is when I got called here. Um, and then also the time, and I think I've told you this story before, but like the entire band was in the corner of the sanctuary, dimly lit, where like nobody, there was just engagement was almost impossible. The speaker system when I first came here was a tin can, like literally a tin can. The subs, like the sub. So I don't know if you've been in Trinity, who's ever watching this. Their sanctuary is pretty huge. I mean, do you know how many seats? It's like
There's a sign on the back that says, max capacity 15,
1,500.
no, but I think it's a joke because it's the number of the Reformation.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
why I'm like, I don't know if it's
I
serious,
want to
but
say it's like 11 or 1,200 that can fit in here. I want to say I could be wrong. It could be more. Don't quote me. Anyway, it's a big room, and it was built around the organ. So, domed, what would you call it? A domed ceiling.
yeah, it
Um,
looks like a big ship just tipped over.
yeah, yeah. Reflections everywhere. Because I believe they were worshiping in the Life Center here, and then when they built the sanctuary, they weren't going to move contemporary worship over here. And at the last minute, after everything was built, they were like, "We should probably move contemporary worship in here." And so it was kind of built around the organ and having that grandioso sound, and that just carry through the room. And then at the last minute, they kind of decided, no, we should probably do contemporary worship as well in there. So it was a challenge to say the least. But as the technology grew, the challenge got easier. So like when it came in, we played for a while, and then it was like, okay, we need to upgrade the sound. So luckily at this church, they were all about kind of pouring into worship. And so we ended up buying, I think it's there now. Is that the same system that's there now? The
I think so,
Yeah.
yeah. The white
Yeah,
speakers,
yeah.
white subs.
Yeah, they're, like, super expensive, like, and they're dialed in so that, like, no reflections happen. I do when they installed that thing in here, it took, like, more than a week, honestly. I remember we played it on a Sunday, but it took more than a week to get everything dialed in, and, like, the guy who, I mean, I think that they were in, like, the magazine for these people, like, it was one of their, uh big jobs, and it sounds really good in that room. It's impressive how good it sounds in that room for what that room is. It's pretty incredible. So, but yeah, so I was here for 10 years, and then in that time, once again, same position, just learning tech, trying to figure it out, reading, talking. Stan Nelson, who was over at Salem, was a big influence in my life. In that capacity, I'd go over, and he would kind of, you got to advocate for yourself, man. You got to tell them that this is important, and they were very open ears here, which was nice. Um, and so did, like I said, worship band, volunteers, and then also all the tech. And at the time, when I got here, I think it was 2008, is really when my video introduction into video started. The principal from the school came over and he said, "Hey man, have you ever made a video before?" I said, "No."
Is this Keith?
Yeah, Keith Gedeke. I said, "No, I've never touched a camera before in my life." He goes, "Well, if I buy you a camera, can you do some videos for the school?" Because they have this thing every year called oh my gosh, just went blank. The musical, big word.
Christmas one?
No. The
Spring?
end of the year musical, right? And they always do these like funny videos for this thing. And they'd done it, or I'm sorry, they'd done it in the past, but then there was kind of a lull where nobody was doing it, and he wanted to get it started again. And so he asked me if I'd be willing. And of course, my yes problem. I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I took this Sony Handycam, like consumer grade Sony Handycam, and I ended up borrowing at this time, I was still on PC. I think we had Macs to run like some things, but we didn't have anything like hefty Macs around. I borrowed this old Mac from Jim Kellerman, who was our over business, from his wife's old Mac, right?
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was old. And I started on Mac's version of their editor. I went blank on it, what it's called, but
iMovie? Final Cut?
no, Final Cut. Yeah, Final Cut. But it was the slowest process ever because Final Cut back then in 2008 was horrible.
Oh, I'm
So
sure, yeah.
they actually rebuilt Final Cut from the ground up some years ago, and now it's spectacular, right? But then it was horrible. Plus, I was editing on this like old computer that probably shouldn't have been running that program anyway. And like to render out a 3-minute video, it would take all night long, right? So I'd have to edit it, hit render, go to bed, wake up in the morning,
Order some pizza, yeah.
and hope it didn't crash throughout the night, right? Like that was my life for that little spring musical time. But that was my introduction into video stuff. And then same thing, I just had a natural interest in it. And kind of just always grew it from there. I'm still not at Chris Wishman caliber by any means. But at this point now, I actually edit and produce a video or I'm a TV show on the side and do some like marketing company stuff. So I've gotten really into video, um, and so it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
So I know you said when you got here in '08, that at that time pretty much you weren't doing any DCE stuff. It was
No, correct. Yeah, so I pretty much got just straight in music now. I'd still help out with you stuff, and I did like I think I taught a class over in the school and would help out in with school functions in the realm of kids. And I coach football and baseball here. Still coach football actually, and so I got my fill of playtime with the kids. So which was nice. I got to fill my bucket on that side and not have to deal with all the admin stuff and the stuff that really wasn't my strong point in or what I call my have tos. So so yeah, for the most part it was all music and tech though when I was here. um yeah, so and then well just to finish the story out, the long drawn out story. Um 2018 got a call over to St. Timothy, and what was funny is I kinda laughed, like, I was like, "Yeah, I'm not taking a call anywhere because I loved being at Trinity. My wife was a teacher here, my kids went to school here, um, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm like, I'm not taking a call somewhere else." But it's that unspoken Lutheran rule, like, pray about it," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll pray about it." And, I took 2 weeks, and we actually just happened to have a Colorado vacation planned at the same time this happened, so went to Colorado with my family, a lot of conversation, a lot of prayer, and then a lot of crying, because I realized that my season at Trinity was coming to an end. Um, it for a multitude of reasons, nothing negative, but just kind of a thought of, like, where my skill level was and where Trinity was, like, for Trinity, for the church to go to the next level, I had to step out of the way. Um, and so that realization was hard, but at the same time, I still had a lot of peace with it. And then the second question was, well, am I called to St. Timothy? Like I knew like maybe my time at Trinity was coming to an end, but was St. Timothy really the place I was called to? And St. Timothy was in a place at that point, kind of where Trinity was when I first showed up at Trinity, and, like, that was what my strong suit was, right? Kinda building up and and, so, yeah, so I accepted the call of St. Timothy, lots of tears shed, lots of and what's crazy is that, like, I was literally moving 15 minutes down the
Yeah, it's not
road.
too far
Like,
from
I'm
here,
not
yeah.
moving, my wife's still teaching here, my kids are still going to school here, but it was hard, man, it was a very hard transition, to leave something you love, and that's what I was doing. I was not leaving on a bad note, I was completely in love with this place, and, kinda scary, but at peace at the same time with it.
Hmm.
And after, of course, after the move, like, hindsight, it's like, yeah, that was right. I mean, like, I heard God correctly. And there was a reason that he called me over to St. Timothy. There was a reason that he opened the door here at Trinity for other people to come in, and, like, you see it now, but, at the time, you don't necessarily see it very clearly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
just
it's very similar to the last church I was serving at. Loved it there. Had no reason to leave. And when I got a call from Chris saying, "Hey, Kyle just left, and they're going to be looking for somebody. You think you're interested?" And I was like, "I mean, not really. I just got married. Um, yeah, I'm not looking, not looking into the same thing. I prayed about it, and it's like God told my wife we needed to move out here before He told me. Because when I first met my wife, she said, "We're not moving." It's the first thing she told me. Her whole family's there. Nobody's ever moved. She's the only one. But yeah, it's tough because like you, in the back of your mind, you always have this thought of what I have here I like and is comfortable. There's nothing. I'm not surprised. I know what's going on, and you're working within systems that you have kind of built up.
Mhm.
And leaving that, you're like, it's a lot of work. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you kind of have this feeling of, maybe my time is up. And then, yeah, God confirms that. And building, this is interesting that you said like that was your strong suit, like going into a place that is just starting. I've met a lot of people like that, um, that's like their passion is to go into churches that, maybe don't have a contemporary service and build it up. And I got to kind of do that in Florida at St. Luke's in Oviedo. And I learned so much. And I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily my passion because it's a lot of work,
Mm.
a lot of work on the tech side. Learned a lot, but it's great. But yeah, I was like, that's not my thing. I work better if I step into a system that is good and it has been going for a while. Um, because I tend to be more creative. Um, so I'm always up in the clouds, kind of have to pull me down. But yeah, so what?
Well, and let me say, I wanna make
Yeah,
sure like, musically, St. Timothy was not necessarily a starting point. Like, I was blessed to walk into St. Timothy. Their worship band over there, which is made up of volunteers from within the church, is phenomenal. It's
okay,
unbelievably phenomenal. But technology-wise, on the tech side, it was a little rough around the edges. Um, so, like, it was more of the tech side of things at St. Timothy than the music side. Musically, they're banger, man. Like,
mm,
um, I don't get to lead that often anymore, which is okay with me. I love the tech side of things. Um, but but their worship band is solid. So, and they were when I walked in the door, which is great. You
okay.
know, I just want to make sure I say that if anybody watches this, they're like, "What do you mean we were starting out?" I'm like, "Well, no, no,
I
no."
made you, yeah. So what? As far as I mean, how much? I guess how much time did you spend serving in the DCE role? Would you say like
So I was actual DCE for
4
4 years.
years?
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, I'm still officially a DCE. I'm on the rosters of DCE. I still do DCE things in the way of like I take all the good parts, right? So like we have DCE retreats and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm
camps
a
and
still a DCE.
yeah,
So I show up, but then I'm like automatically the music guy at the DCE retreats, for the most part, which is fun. It's great. I love it. And now, honestly, I'm doing more DCE work now at St. Timothy than I was at Trinity. So now, I'm doing like not, I mean, like a Wednesday night with the high school. Try to keep that somewhat consistent, and then helping out. It's a little bit different of a dynamic because it's a smaller church. We actually are all in one room. So the pastors have their own offices, but the rest of the ministry staff is in one room in cubicles.
Yeah, I
So
wouldn't last in that.
yeah, we
I wouldn't
get
get anything done.
0 work done. People are like, "Why do you work so much at night?" I'm like, "'Cause I talk all day long." Like, we get nothing done. But the camaraderie and the collaboration and the team ministry is bar none the best I've ever seen. The best I've ever seen at any church. And we love hanging out with each other, which is great. Like, the the culture of our staff is so healthy right now, it's ridiculous, which is awesome.
Yeah,
It
how
doesn't
would you say that helps, in planning and, like, organizing, planning events and executing events and stuff like that? How does that,
Yeah,
affect that?
well, I mean, we all got each other's back, and, like, what's good is, like, in a lot of churches, and I've seen this a lot, um, like, if you give critical feedback, people take it so personal and, like, get their feelings hurt. And that still happens from time to time at our
Yeah,
church, but because there's such this, like, love and grace and forgiveness instilled in our staff, like, we can talk to each other and it's gone, right? Like, you may get irritated with somebody, on a day, but, like, literally by the next day, it's gone.
mm,
Yeah, it's been a fantastic working environment. It doesn't hurt that the senior pastor there also is like, we've known each other since we were freshmen in high schools, college roommates, and best men at each other's weddings. So, like, Brad's one of my best friends. Hence the reason he called me. I think he actually telephone called me earlier before the call and asked for names, and then like 6 months later, he's like, "None of those names worked out. I want to call you." And I was like, "Ha ha ha."
he was really calling you for your name, yeah.
Yeah, well, just because he knew that we could work well together, and it's a whole, once again, different dynamic when the senior pastor is your best friend, right? He's still my boss, and I still respect him as my boss, but it's a different relationship, and I know at Trinity, and this is only my personal experience, like, the senior pastor has this, like, "Oh," even growing up, it was like that, like, he was on this pedestal, he's the senior pastor, and so, like, even though, like, I had a good working relationship with all the senior pastors here, there was always this, like, "But they're the senior pastor," and, like, now, my senior pastor is just Brad, you know? And, like, he's still, like I said, he still 100% has my respect, and, like, he doesn't have to pull the senior pastor card on me because he's just a friend. Like, so if he can tell me, like, what's up, and I'm okay with it because, like, that's what buddies do, like, and we keep each other accountable, and it's great. I love where I'm at now. Well, I've never not loved where I was at, to be honest with you. So, but I do love where I'm at now for sure.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up, yeah, same way, all the pastors and, like, even, any of the church workers, the DCEs, the music people, I always put them they were always on this pedestal, and I remember, as I was getting into high school, I had a mentor, his name was Chris Haas. Lives in Hawaii now.
Bro, I went to school with Chris Haas.
Yeah, he went
It's
to Irvine?
No, he went to Seward, didn't he?
I don't know
Maybe
where
it's
I
a
don't know where he
different,
went,
there's a
but
Haas that went to, I thought it was Chris
there's a
Haas.
few different Haases. I think
Okay.
his brother's a pastor. But he told me he was very, open and vulnerable and transparent. He always told me like, "Hey," he's like, "I may be your leader, I may be your mentor, but, I still struggle with this and this and this. Like, my life's not perfect." I and that opened my eyes to see like, oh, these people are just like me. They're just
Mm,
regular people. And that really shocked me, but it also like, yeah, made and that's why I think I tend to gravitate more towards leaders who are transparent and vulnerable, down to earth. I mean, every senior pastor I've met has been down to earth, but just ones that you can tell like, oh, they're not trying to put on a facade. They're real. They have emotions. They're not robots. Yeah.
well, and I think that too helps for people that are even in the future maybe going into ministry. Like, I think it's so important to be authentic, right? Same thing happened to me. So my youth guy here, his name's Mike Kinkfoot, and, like,
Sorry.
what's up?
I just I was not expecting that last name. It threw me off.
Oh,
Sorry.
he's still in ministry up in actually. Do you ever meet John Cordray, who was the pastor
Yeah.
here? Yeah, so
No, he's with him
he's the
in
senior pastor now.
Missouri,
No, in
Michigan.
no,
Starts with an M. Maine.
just how many? No, I think he's in. Now you made me forget, bro. Oh well. Anyway, Midwest, North. Um, I totally went blank because you called out all those
I think
states.
it's Missouri.
No, it's not Missouri. I promise you that, bro. It's
What
not
was that,
Missouri.
Chris?
Indiana. That is
Okay, got it.
Indiana.
Indiana. Thanks, Chris.
That is not an
Got our
M.
fact checker over here.
Thanks,
There's
CNN.
Midwest, Middle East, Midwest. Yeah.
Middle East. Yeah, that's not very close to the Middle East, but I get you. Anyway, so he's still in ministry there. But so he's my youth guy, and same thing. Very, very transparent. We had some really conversations that I wouldn't even have with my parents, right? But I had them with him because he was willing to be that person, that influence, that Christian influence in my life, which made me see like, oh, they are real people, you know? And so I think that's why I tried to do my best to be just Pat Blake. You know, I'm not trying to be anybody I'm not. And
To quote the great Gavin DeGraw,
Mm.
I don't want to be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately.
Yeah,
It's profound.
dude, I mean, right next to the great thinkers of 2024.
Yeah, the thing is the coolest part about that idea of being transparent and down to earth and making when you're in discipleship. I was thinking specifically in discipleship. It always gets difficult when you're trying to like disciple somebody and you're pretending like you have it all together, and it's like that ain't gonna work. Like discipleship works best. I mean, like kind of like just what we've been talking about. When they're saying, hey, like I may not be struggling with the same thing that you're struggling with, but I struggle.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because right now we are in. So our pastors went to this thing called Exponential,
Yeah.
on fire for discipleship of the church, right? Like, so right now we're actually in a series, a discipleship series where we're calling to our people like, hey, this is what we think the next step is for our church. And so pastor has been like, we've been doing a discipleship thing with the staff for quite a while now, since they came back from this exponential. And then he's, who are you discipling? Who's on your, like, are you being intentional? Like, let's go around and talk about who you're going to disciple next,
Ooh.
and for, it's been so funny for me because I think I struggle with this in a lot of ways in life, but I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I mean, I can't, but when I think about like just walking with somebody, praying with them, living life with them, um, being in scripture with them, like I can do that. But like the word discipleship for me gets so scary because I'm like, I can't be discipling somebody because I am not the guy to be doing that. Like, you don't know me very well. And so I've really struggled. Been a lot of prayer lately about like God, help me to be confident in my worthiness in you, right? And because that's what it comes down to, being confident in your worthiness, not because of what you've done, but because of what He's done through you, through Jesus in you. Um, and so right now that's been on my heart. It's been a prayer a lot for
Mm.
me as of lately. And I know I disciple people, but it's natural in the way of like just my personality. But I don't know if I've ever been intentional about it and been on the front of my mind per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because the thought I think about that a lot too. It's intentionally discipling somebody. I'm like, well, does that mean like when I'm hanging out with somebody, I got to stop and be like, oh, hold on, disciple. Oh yes, I should do this. And it's like to me, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna plan stuff out like that. It's just like a lifestyle, a rhythm of your own life that it's like you're just doing your best to follow Jesus
Right. Yeah.
with other people and just letting other people know, hey, I don't just figured out. I'm in the same boat as you are.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure, man. Well, and go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing. Like, I've read that a million times, you know? But I never saw, like, go and make disciples as, like, a command to go and make disciples. It's always like, "Oh, go talk to people about Jesus and make sure they know about Jesus and baptize them," right? And that was in my head kinda how I thought about it, but then, like, as we got into this go and make disciples, well, what is disciple? Disciples is a person who's making other disciples. How does that happen? You know? And so the intentionality of it has really been eye-opening for me, you know, which is crazy. Born and raised Lutheran my whole life, and I'm sure I've thought about this before, but just right now in my life, it's been on the forefront for sure, just because of where our congregation is at in our walk with God. So it's been great though. I mean, that's the other thing about our staff is we do Bible studies together twice a week. So like Monday we have a 10 o'clock meeting, which is just Bible study, and then we pray for the congregation. Or the prayers, our prayers and the congregation's prayers. And then Tuesday is a Bible study. And then we talk about how we can pray for each other. And then we go into a business meeting. So like, I mean, twice a week we're in the word together. We're just constantly, you know, and we get to read books together and discuss them. And so s- spiritual life wise has been incredible at St. Timothy. I'm not saying it was horrible at Trinity, but I think because of just the
Yeah,
nature
the
of
larger
Trinity,
staff.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just harder to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas at St. Timothy, it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's the with discipleship, just another thought I had, then we can move on to another question, but it's like for the longest time I always thought that, you know, that specifically go and make disciples of all nations. I'm like, well, we're just called to live, try to live like Christ and love other people. And I always thought that through that, that was like the main avenue of discipleship, that, you know, actions, not words, da da da. And it's like, you know, when you lean more into it, you're realizing it's not just as simple as trying to live like Jesus and loving others. There's like, there's more intentionality to it. And then you're like, oh, wait, I'm not even discipling or getting discipled. It's like a, yeah, it's like a rabbit hole once you get down it.
Oh, 100%. It's I always joke that like being a Christian is the most simple, complex thing there is because it all boils down to one thing, right? Christ on the cross. Everything boils down to that. So like it's pretty simple. You're a sinner. Jesus died for you. Because of that, you're forgiven and justified through him, right? It's pretty simple. But then like when you start getting into it, it becomes so complex, it's ridiculous.
It's like the way Lutherans say, oh, it's simple. It's just the solas. And you're like, that's not
But
simple. That's Latin.
it yeah,
Talking about simple.
but it is, and then, you know, and that's what's great about our staff meetings too is like we get into the weeds a lot and in these scenarios of like life, and we all sit there and we kind of ponder like, yeah, I don't know. You know, like
Hmm.
you do the best with what God's given you, you know, I guess in the end.
The when we were talking earlier about you starting the contemporary service at Zion, um,
Good memory.
it made me think of well, just I I've worked at quite a few different churches in different states, and just talking to different pastors about their experiences with contemporary. It's like all of the older pastors who tend to be a little bit more traditional. They always say the same thing. They're like, "Oh, we tried it and it didn't work out," and I'm like, "Well, what'd you guys do?" Because if it was just, you know, someone up there with an acoustic guitar, and you're like, "Oh, nobody showed up, and we're gonna cancel it," and it's like, you got to you got to make it good. If your church is wanting to start a contemporary service, you can't just throw a guy with acoustic guitar up there and say, "All right, we're going to start this." And when nobody shows up, you can't just say, "Ah, we tried, didn't work." It's like, well, of course, because it wasn't good. It's not gonna
Well,
get.
and what is good though, you know? So
Yeah,
I
it's
I think too though that like because I've seen just acoustic and guitar and a dude singing and it was good,
yeah,
you know. I think the question is like, is it is it really spirit led? Are you doing it just because like it's the thing to do? Are you doing it because you feel like it will help your congregation connect and respond to God's goodness in a different way? And I think too, like that's what's great. Like I said, I grew up traditional. I love traditional worship, 100%. Like I love being in traditional worship. I love the hymns. I love the liturgy. We were 5 and 15 pagers every other Sunday, right? I mean, got it still memorized. And but I also love contemporary worship, kind of not for different reasons per se, but it just speaks because it's the same reason, but it speaks to different parts of my brain. Does that make sense? Like I, like you, have a very creative side. I'm not very organized. Um, I'm kind of all over the place. I got a real bad case of the ADHD. But traditional worship kind of hits me different than contemporary does, but they both hit me for the same reason of being able to respond to what God has done in my life and to be able to, you know, just really praise him in two different ways. It's the same way, but two different aspects, two different avenues, I guess. And so if your congregation, if you see a need for people like that speak different, worship language than traditional, then 100%, I think it's important to do. And maybe you don't even know. And maybe that's the reason it fails, right? Maybe because like maybe you think it is, but then really it's not. So and that's okay. But I've seen the spirit move in some pretty simplistic ways. That's one of the reasons I love like you know Shane and Shane is obviously like have you ever been to one of their concerts? You need to go, bro.
Yeah.
Like no, there's no mamma jamma magic on the tech side. It's like they do have some like backlighting, but the lights don't really move. Like the screens are just white words on a black background. And now, granted, they are extremely talented musicians, but like the s- the spirit moving in that room with those psalms, and because they sing psalms and songs and hymns of the spirit, right? Um, it's it's incredible. It's incredible to be a part of that. And plus, Shane Bernard is he's a just a fantastic worship leader, and you can tell like he's in scripture all the time, and he's able just to like whip it out, and they do a fantastic job. So if you've never seen a Shane and Shane concert live, go see them. They're fantastic, fantastic. But anyway, to my point is the question is it being spirit led, right?
Hmm.
Spirit led in truth. Um,
So you could have all the bells and whistles,
yeah, and it could,
fancy
yeah,
lights.
and it could be horrible. Oh, believe me, I've experienced that as well. I will not name the church, but I remember going to a Christmas service. It was a big mega church in the Houston area, and I mean, they budgets through the roof. They got everything, and I remember sitting in there going, "This is horrible." Like the music was fantastic, but like I don't know. It was hard to explain. Like the people that were leading on stage, at least in my opinion, and this, for somebody else 3 rows down, maybe it spoke to them. But for me at that point in time, like I felt like they were being performy and not authentic. And it was like we're putting on a show, and it turned me off, to be honest with you. And I think in all honesty, that's probably a horrible way to look at it. Because I was probably being a little judgmental. And maybe it was the fact I was maybe at that point in time I was being I was coveting my neighbor's technology. I don't know. Um, so maybe it was on me, but it didn't, and I'm not saying that we should obviously we shouldn't base our worship experience on feelings, but feelings are a large part of our worship experience, right? But then again, I always say fake it till you make it. So, and what I mean by that is like, are there days that you wake up on Sunday morning and you're like, I really don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to worship. I don't want to get up there. I don't want to go through the trouble, but it's my job, so I have to, right? And so you put on a happy face and you go out there and you start leading. How many times when you start leading by the middle of the first song, all those thoughts are out of your head and you are in it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always like, dude, fake it till you make it, because there's gonna be times when you're not in the mood to worship. There's been times when you're not in the mood to respond, when you're not in the mood to be, in a worship experience at all. But in my for me, every time I get into it, all those thoughts leave and I'm in it. I'm like, dude, God, and thank you. Thanks God for making me do this, because I needed this. I needed to be filled by your word. I needed to be able to respond to you, to sing out these songs and to listen to what, you have to tell me today. So,
Yeah, no, it can definitely be, week in and week out. You're listening to worship music, you're planning worship sets, you're writing charts, you're doing this and that, editing tracks, making music
mm.
videos or editing videos. So you're just like
Well,
you
that's
spend
not, that's
you spend all week doing all this.
plus your personal life, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, plus your personal life, but it's like you spend this whole week doing this, and then you get to Sunday morning, and it's like, yeah, there's definitely some days because I mean, 52 Sundays in a year, like you're most likely for half of them, not going to be feeling good. Um, but yeah, it's like you show up, you're like, yeah, whatever, and then you get going, and it's like, yeah, usually it's the rehearsal or the run through before the service, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel better now.
yeah,
And I'm like, it's funny because I'm always like, well, I could do this at home with my guitar and just worship in the room, which I've been trying to do a lot more lately. But it's like in my mind, I'm like, well, I can't. I don't want to do that because I've been doing that all week. Da, da, da. And it's like, it's as simple as just worshiping by yourself in a room. And it's like, yeah, you overthink it. And it is tough because I was talking about this with somebody a while ago. It's like being a planning worship at a church. It's like somebody says it's equivalent to putting on 52 Sundays in a year. There's 52 kind of like Broadway shows
mm,
every weekend. Every weekend there's a Broadway show, and it's like obviously church is not Broadway, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, a lot of tech, a lot of musicianship, and it's like it's a big deal, and how to build that sustainably and realize that I'm not going to be I'm not going to be filled with joy every time,
mm.
but knowing that this is going to bring me joy um, is a lot. And that's why I always tell people, and when people ask me like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" I'm like, "Worship director." I personally think it's the best job because it doesn't feel like work to me. I don't know about when you edit videos. I'm sure that
Yeah, that gets a little tedious at times, and it just depends on the video, right? Like, if the creative juices are flowing, then it's fantastic, but if it's not, it's a grind.
yeah.
But speaking to what you're saying, I think one of the questions you had on there, like, what were some of the things that you don't necessarily like to do, all right? Or
Uh,
something along those lines.
yeah. Like, what are two things you've had to do for your job that you did not envision? I think,
Well,
or that
yeah,
are
I mean,
different.
that's kind of a different question, but I mean, I my little saying is this, like, every job is made up of have tos and want tos, right? When the have tos outweigh the want tos, maybe it's time to take a look at where you're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do that when my wife and I are talking about buying stuff.
Yeah,
We do that. Is this a have or a want?
yeah.
It's like if it's a want, then we can just push it.
Well, no, but it's opposite for work though. So like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
so like those jobs in those little jobs in your job that you have to do. Yeah, that's how you see them. Like, oh gosh, I got to do this, right? But then there's other things in your job. You're like, I can't wait to get to do this, right? So when the I can't wait to get to do this is outweighed by the oh I have to do this. Are you, is
might
that
be on a slow,
is
slow
that is that the place?
snowball roll
Yeah,
down
is
the
that
hill
the
to burn
place you
out.
want
Yeah.
to be, right? And so um so I'm but for me, like, my want tos, things I get to do are outweigh I mean, like, astronomically outweigh the things that I have to do for me in my job. And that's what, I love. I love what I do. I mean, I 100% love what I do.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you were doing, I mean, yeah, if your week was filled with things and you're like, oh man, I got to do this again.
It's crazy to me.
After a year, I'm saying either A, you're gonna leave, or B,
Oh, you'll burn out. Yeah,
burn out and leave
100%.
ministry. I've seen people
Yeah.
leave ministry because of that. And
Oh, yeah,
it's
100%. Well, and what's crazy to me is, like, I've talked to people before that are like, "You're so lucky, Pat." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "You love your job." I'm like, "I've never known anything else, right?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, you don't love your job?" And they're like, "I hate my job."
yeah, the thought of working a job and not liking it to me
And I
is wild.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Then go do something else," right? We actually had a our country band had a song we wrote called "Go Do Something Else."
Hmm.
That's what it was about. Like, if every day is that much of a grind for you, go do something else. And I get it. Like, it's easier said than done, right? You got to support a family. You got to,
Yeah,
and
there's
you
more
get,
complicated
yeah,
than
you
just
get used to a certain lifestyle, and it's hard to leave that. But yeah, the thought of like not waking up and not wanting to go to work every single, no, some days I wake up and don't want to go to work, but that's for different reasons. That's because I'm being lazy or whatever. But like the thought of waking up and just despising the fact that I had to have to go to work would be miserable for me. I would not last. Honestly, like sometimes editing video, it takes me a while to get to it because I will put it off if I'm not in the right mood
hmm.
until like the 11th hour, and then I kill myself. Those are nice. Like my wife, she already knows now. We've been married for 20 years, so she's like, "You're not coming to bed tonight, are you?" I'm like, "Nope."
There was a question on here we didn't get to yet, but I'd maybe like to lean into a little bit. This question is, what if the roles of DCE and worship um, taught you most about working in the church? How they're similar, different? And I guess because a lot of people that only do worship and that have only done worship will look at the other roles in the church and not understand them, um, and vice versa. And I guess you doing a little bit of DCE work and then also some worship stuff, and tech, like between all three of those roles, what I guess what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned so far? I guess if you could look back at all those three, put them on a Pinterest.
Mhm.
What do they call those things?
Bored.
Yeah, board, and like, what's the first thing that would come to your mind?
I don't know if this is the answer to the question or not, but for me, team ministry is huge, right? Um, and not like you got to advocate for your ministry 100%, but you also have to realize that there's a lot of ministries going on within that church, and then being willing to work with one another, and not eh, having boundaries 100%. I get it. I'm horrible at having boundaries, but the minute your staff starts turning into, well, that's not my job, then you're it becomes makes life a lot harder, right? And maybe it's a have to, you have to tack on, and there's legitimately 100 good reasons to say no too. So don't get me wrong, right? And there's ways to politely say no as well, and that's okay. But at the same time, if every time is a no, just then where's your heart at, right? Where's your heart at? And like I said, I don't know if that necessarily answers that question per se, but that's just one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking. Because I've never experienced it per se, but I've seen it, or at least talked to other people about it, and it happened to them, where like they feel like they're on a different team than the rest of their ministry staff, and like it's a horrible place to be in ministry, right? We're here to work together, and um, and even like for us, if I come up with oh look, I need to get this position covered, right? And my first go to is going to be like, because we do work well together, and I do like for the youth minister Dan, like a lot of times I'm like, hey man, this guy called in sick tomorrow's worship. Can you run tick for me? Like I don't have a guy right now, and if he can't, or if he has family matter, or like he's been away too much and needs to be home with his wife, and he can't be there, he'll say like, no, I can't. But at the same time, he's like, but let me help you think of some people that we can get in that position real quick. You know what I mean? And it's not just like, no, I can't. Sorry, dude. Good luck. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and that's how it is in our meetings. When we go around, we're like, well, I can do that. Or if not, like, oh, think of some people in this congregation that would be good at that. And let's go from there. And so we're always bouncing off ideas of each other. That's one of the things I love about, like, it's just such good team ministry. Um, and it's okay. Like I said, it's okay to say no, but just not like, no, check you later, like, good
Mhm.
luck with what you're doing over there. I got my own problems over here. Kinda
Yeah, I
we
do.
take on each other's burdens, we take on each other's joys.
Yeah. That's there's definitely a fine line of like you wanna
Yeah,
have healthy boundaries, but at
100%.
the same time, yeah, when it's a triggery thing when I hear people say, "Oh, that's not my job." I'm like, I get that look because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, ministry. Look, I personally am not in ministry to be comfortable. If I wanted to be
Right,
comfortable, I'd go work a desk job. I'd go work somewhere else where I could be comfortable. But like, I don't know. That's why when I see people in ministry that are like, it's not my job. I'm gonna stay in my lane. Everything's nice and tidy. I'm just like, there's definitely I'm sure there's some positives to that, but just from what I've seen, I work well with the people that are like, hey, what do you need to get done? Doesn't
right,
matter what it is. Either A, I'll do it, or B, I'll find someone to do it.
yeah. Or
Um,
help you find somebody to do it, or whatever it may be, you know, like you said, it's a fine line. It's a juggle. It really is a juggle. Because I get it. I honestly struggle all the time with asking other people to do things because I say yes so often, and my wife will attest to this, that I probably, don't put my family first enough. And so I'm I think I'm getting better at it. I don't know, don't ask Sarah. But, I project that onto other people, so I'm afraid to even ask them because I already see they're busy, And then I have to realize, like, okay, no, God may be working through that, It's okay, and I'm okay with a no. I'm okay with a no, like, from my volunteers, from other people. Um, no is just a fine answer as yes is. At least I know where I sit. I know where I'm at. So you have to, yeah, it's a fine juggle, like you said. You have to be aware of that, but at the same time, like, you want to give people opportunities to do the work of the Lord or whatever you want to call it.
yeah, that reminds me of Brian, who's one of the volunteers here. He can he can do quite a few different things. And when I first got here last year, he was playing and singing almost every Sunday. And his wife said, it's nice when when he's down here sitting with me during worship. And I was like, so I gave him some time off um, from Sunday worship on the team. And after a couple Sundays went by, he texted me, "Hey, I noticed you need a singer. You mind if I jump in this weekend?" And I was laughing because he went from playing every weekend, and I was like, "Oh, give you some time off so you can sit with your wife." And he was like, "I miss it." But um, one of the things on here I wanted to get to, just to kind of wrap us up. Um, I would say probably this is more of a tech related question. Reoccurring problems or difficulties you run into on a weekly basis. I know it's like, well, where do I start? But I don't know. The one that I guess that has had an impact on you, or that you learned how to fix, or that I
Every
don't know.
Sunday.
Every Sunday, yeah, there's problems every Sunday, but
Yeah, it's tech, bro.
yeah,
It's tech. I mean, like, I truly believe that the devil resides in technology. A- And I say that facetiously, but if there's gonna be a problem on Sunday morning, it's gonna be with tech. Bottom line. I mean, um, every Sunday it's something, and I'm working with systems that are piecemeal together, honestly, and I've kind of piecemealed them together because I didn't have the budget to go. So, like, I got a brand new computer, but I'm still run my main projector in our life center in our where we do contemporary worship. Oh, it's like 20 years old. It's limping along, right? And the entire like the Extron, like the switcher and the scaler, uh, and there's like a brain that like controls everything. It's all broken. Like nothing works now, but we don't necessarily have the money right now to push into that because I also need new cameras, right? So I've had to pretty much kind of what's the
Fix what you
yeah,
can.
yes, I don't know what the politically correct way of saying Jimmy rig, whatever.
It used to be
Um,
Jerry Rig, but
yeah,
someone told me the other day
I
we
think it's
can't say
bad
that
too.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, basically make things work, right? And I feel I think that's my strength, honestly, unfortunately. So is like I am able to make things work with next to nothing. And don't get me wrong, like we pour money into, but there's always something.
Yeah.
There's always something else. Um and so from the back screen not coming on and figuring out why that's not coming on, and then you and plus I'm in charge of tech for Sunday school stuff too, but I'm also in rehearsals. So half the time I'm running to a Sunday school room. Now the good part is I have a son now who's 12 and I have trained and he loves tech stuff as well. Like he's
Nice.
into computers and he does video work now as well. And so like basically I've made him my little minion on Sunday mornings. And so I'm like, oh, and go leave Sunday school and check 104. They can't get the VCR to work, or not VCR,
Yeah.
but DVD player to work. So I make him run down there and do it.
They can't get the overhead projector to work. You
Yeah,
gotta
100%. Like my 12-year-old knows this system better than anyone else in that building, except for myself, of course. But yeah, it's fantastic when your kids get old enough
Yeah, I
to.
like that. Good advice for anyone out there looking to
Oh, I
get help
guarantee
with their
there's.
tech stuff,
Yeah, there's
have kids.
most of my tech workers. I mean, I have some adults that are solid, right? And I try to put an adult in the booth because if you don't, what happens is the phones whip out, and then the next thing you know, the lyrics aren't moving, and you're like, "What's going on?" And you look up, and they're like scrolling on their phone in the middle of a song. It happens. It's happened. Um, but like, yeah, the kids are a huge value in volunteer work in the tech side of things because most of them get it, right? They've grown up with tech.
Yeah,
Most
the
of them,
iPad kid
yeah,
generation.
and
Yeah.
they're not scared to hit buttons, right? Which is good, I think. I mean, well, because a lot of adults will get on those things, especially ones that don't have experience in them, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to break something." Well, the kids like they don't care, right? They're like, "We'll figure it out." Um, and so obviously sounds a little bit different because you got to have an ear for that. It's hard, it's hard to find a good sound man, especially at a small church. And that is what it is. You do the best with what you got. We have a great sound man. Don't get me wrong. We have a guy who's there consistently every week, and he's got a great ear. And he was there before I got there. He's a blessing for sure. Um, but anyway, kids are a great asset for the tech ministry. I believe that. I know Salem too is the same way, and I think here as well.
Yeah, they got a tech class,
Yeah,
and kids are pretty much running
yeah.
almost everything. Yeah.
It's finding people to run tech's not hard. I don't think. Well, ish. Finding people that are able to troubleshoot tech is where
Hmm.
the big, the big hard thing comes into play. Because like when there's a problem, is that person going to freeze up, or is that person? I'll never forget. We had a kid when I was working at Trinity. He was this running sound for the drama stuff. And I was in there trying to, teach him the soundboard. And at this point, it wasn't music. It was just talking. So it was just levels, it was people on mics. And, we were at rehearsal one day, and I wasn't going to be at the performance because I had a family event. So I was making sure that he was good to go for this performance, knew what was going to happen and how to work everything. And, somebody came on stage and they walked in front of the speaker and the feedback went up, and I look over to the left and this kid is plugging his ears just standing there. And I'm like, you're the one in charge of that, bro. You can't just plug your ears. Like it's not gonna fix
Hmm.
until you fix it. It was awesome.
That's
Little
great.
side story. Sorry.
Yeah, let's just end on this question. What are you excited about most in your ministry at St. Timothy?
Yeah, honestly, right now, I think it's more the spiritual side of things than anything. This whole discipleship process we're going through as a congregation, is crazy exciting for me. Like the thought of all of those people moving in the same direction, um, doing what God has called us to do is ridiculous exciting for me, honestly. I'm excited. I've been real excited about the spiritual future of St. Timothy for a while now. Um, I think Brad's brought a lot of things. Senior pastor was great. He retired a few years ago. Um, Brad just kind of brings some different ideas, and he's really kind of caught fire for this thing through things he's been to, and he's done a good job of catching the staff on fire. And so now we're working on catching the congregation on fire for it, and I'm just excited about where God's going to take it from here. And people, honestly, we just had the first big discipleship. We're doing a series, a 6-week series. We had the first one last Sunday, okay? And, like, it was literally just we didn't really talk about, like, how to do it. It was just like, this is why you should be a disciple or be discipling somebody. And we had people calling or talking or emailing, like, "Where do we go? How do we sign up to do this? Like, how do I disciple?" Like, people were excited about the thought of it. Now, I'm sure there's other people in the congregation that are like, "Oh, no way," right?
I gotta talk to people.
Yeah, right. But the fact that people were already starting to show, like, "Yeah, I'm ready for this. Let's do this. How do I do this?" That's exciting for us as a staff and just as a congregation as a whole.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of the Worship Unplugged podcast. Do us a favor, and if you can, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. It would really mean a lot to us. We'll see you on the next one.